The first strike hit her before anyone even realized it was coming. A harsh shove, a stagger against the cold concrete wall, and a boot connecting squarely with her jaw. Blood spurted, metallic and bright, splattering onto the gray floor. The three Marines laughed, sharp, cruel bursts of sound that echoed off the bare walls of the training corridor. "Weak," one barked. "Pathetic," another jeered. Ava Cross, quiet, observant, unnervingly calm, did not flinch. Her hand brushed the blood from her lip, slow, deliberate, as if she were cataloging every detail, every angle, every heartbeat of the attack. No scream, no retaliation, only a pause, a silence so deliberate it made the air itself feel dangerous. She turned, just enough to level her gaze at the first aggressor. Her eyes were unreadable, calm, almost too calm, betraying nothing. The knuckle scars, thin, layered lines running across her fists, peeked from beneath her long sleeves as she adjusted her jacket. Subtle, almost invisible, yet a whisper to anyone trained enough to notice. This wasn't just a quiet woman. This was someone who had survived far more than a hallway confrontation, someone whose restraint was as sharp as a blade. The Marines didn't see it. They saw blood, they saw a stumble, they saw vulnerability. They didn't see Ava Cross, a shadow, a hunter cloaked in civilian obedience, waiting. By the time the echoes of their laughter faded, she was already moving, gliding through the compound like someone who didn't belong yet owned every inch she walked. Her arrival at Camp Larks had been silent. No fanfare, no insignia waving, no combat stripes glittering under harsh fluorescent lights. Just a duffel bag, a rucksack with a faded name tape, and a single manila envelope handed over to the gate MP with a nod that suggested the papers carried more authority than she ever would. Quiet, unassuming, unnoticed, yet she observed everything, every whisper, every smirk, every micro-expression in the sweat-stained, noisy, chaotic halfway house between elite and expendable. By the end of the first morning, whispers had already started. "The new girl," someone muttered, quiet, soft-spoken, probably harmless. Ava didn't acknowledge the nickname. She didn't have to. The quiet ones always go unnoticed, until they don't. She logged attendance, passed clipboards, monitored timers, and adjusted equipment with an unerring precision that drew glances she never returned. Her gloves stayed on during drills, black, unbranded, a subtle wall between her hands and anyone foolish enough to misjudge her. Even in motion, she projected calm authority. Not a word, not a glance, just presence, sharp, undeniable, and slow burning. The harassment escalated. First, whispered comments at the chow line, then casual nudges in the gym annex, the faint brush of a shoulder, accidental but precise enough to provoke. Ava Cross didn't react. Her lips pressed tight, her jaw locked, eyes forward. Every slight, every provocation, cataloged. Every weakness of their approach silently mapped in her mind. And yet, to the world, she remained still, restrained, a phantom in plain sight. No retaliation, no complaint, only observation. Subtle foreshadowing revealed itself in the small things, the slight tilt of her head as she adjusted a poorly stacked barbell, the controlled motion of her shoulders while walking past the whispering crowd, the almost imperceptible flex of her fingers when she touched a clipboard, scars showing briefly through thin sleeves. The audience, reading her through the lens of the narrative, begins to sense it. Ava Cross is no ordinary recruit. She is lethal. She is trained. She is Navy SEAL qualified, black belt, combat instructor, and she is hiding it, waiting. By the end of the first week, the pattern was clear. The bullies, emboldened by silence, pushed harder. Slight shoves, mocking laughter, even a kick aimed at her midsection that she barely registered. Still, she didn't fight back. Not yet. Not here. Her silence was a weapon, sharpened over years of discipline. And somewhere beneath that quiet exterior, a storm was gathering. A storm the Marines would never see coming. A storm that would rewrite everything they thought they knew about power, authority, and the cost of underestimating someone who already knew how to survive. The silence of the early morning didn't fool anyone. Ava Cross was awake before the first alarm. She moved through the compound with deliberate precision, the soles of her boots whispering across gravel, as though testing every angle, every shadow, every unspoken weakness in her environment. No one saw her reviewing the previous day's chaos in her notebook, her pen dancing across pages that only she could decipher. Incidents catalogued, shoves, whispers, kicks, all recorded with the same meticulous eye she had used in the field. Every misstep, every lapse in posture, every overconfident moment from their aggressors documented. And yet, she didn't speak. She didn't accuse. She didn't even acknowledge the chaos surrounding her. Silent preparation was her weapon. By mid-morning, the subtle campaign began. The training floor, usually a theater of ego, noise, and chaos, became her canvas. She observed, a ghost at the edges, noting the smallest cracks in form, the distracted glance, the slight imbalance as someone rushed through a shuttle drill. She adjusted timers, corrected equipment positions, and manipulated station setups just slightly, not enough to be obvious, but enough to test the Marine's reflexes. The effect was instantaneous. Whispers started again. "The new girl, she's everywhere," someone muttered. Ava didn't react. Her lips pressed tight, her jaw locked, eyes forward. Every slight, every provocation catalogued. Every weakness of their approach silently mapped in her mind. And yet, to the world, she remained still, restrained, a phantom in plain sight. No retaliation, no complaint, only observation. Flashbacks flickered through her mind as she moved between stations. A rooftop insertion in the dead of night. The hum of helicopter blades against a starless sky. The flash of steel as she neutralized a threat without hesitation. These memories didn't surface for fear or nostalgia. They were blueprints, mental exercises reinforcing muscle memory and strategy. Her body moved almost instinctively, placing aggressors into positions where balance betrayed them, where gravity became an accomplice, where their own overconfidence was the trap. Each takedown, each subtle manipulation was executed flawlessly, leaving them unharmed but humiliated, questioning their very judgment, their very identity as Marines. Their pride, their arrogance, their ego, all crumbling silently under her observation. By midday, Ava Cross had orchestrated the first layer of the psychological chessboard. Burke, the loudest and most self-assured, now flinched when she entered a room. He walked past her too quickly, eyes avoiding hers, muttering excuses under his breath. Lechner and Harwood, once brash, now hesitated at drills, second-guessing their every movement, their minds unconsciously cataloging every lesson, every mistake. Ava never once addressed them directly. Her silent mastery was far more potent than confrontation. Every motion, every glance, every small unspoken command had embedded a seed of doubt, a crack in their armor, a precursor to the coming storm. Even routine exercises became instruments of subtle control. The shuttle sprints, the load drills, partner rotations. She subtly adjusted weights, timing, even spacing between cones. A slight shift of a barbell, a misplaced mat. Not to harm, not to punish, but to expose overconfidence, to invite error, to allow the universe to demonstrate what poor judgment really cost. And it worked. Eyes widened, breaths caught, and whispers traveled fast across the compound. Ava Cross was everywhere, unseen, lethal in her restraint. No one dared underestimate her anymore, not after the silent mastery she displayed. By the afternoon, the stakes had grown. Burke tried again, a shoulder nudge, subtle but deliberate, a test to provoke a reaction. Ava didn't react. She didn't flinch. Instead, she pivoted just slightly, leaning into the motion, her elbow guiding his weight in a way that seemed natural. In an instant, he found himself flat on the mat, stunned, breathing harshly, eyes wide with disbelief. No one moved to help. The entire training floor froze. Ava stepped back, gloves folded neatly, eyes scanning the group, her face calm, unreadable, like the storm had passed and left only clarity. Even as tension rippled through the room, she continued to manipulate her environment and observe every nuance. Minor allies who had once gone unnoticed now watched with quiet admiration. Her control technique left a lingering shock, an impression deeper than pain or anger. Each aggressor's confidence eroded with each calculated maneuver, each demonstration of skill restrained by law, by ethics, by her own discipline. And while the audience, students, trainees, observers, whispered and speculated, Ava Cross remained untouchable, a shadow with a presence so commanding that even silence felt like an order. By the late afternoon, small cracks became evident. Burke's voice, once booming, now faltered in the background. Lechner hesitated mid-drill, caught between instinct and learned caution. Harwood's eyes darted nervously, hands gripping equipment too tightly. Ava's eyes followed each one, not with malice, but with precision, cataloging every reaction. Each subtle move, each psychological edge, each controlled reversal in technique was a silent verdict. Arrogance will be undone, ego will falter, and restraint is the ultimate weapon. She wasn't just teaching, they were learning the cost of misjudging someone who had survived wars, literal and metaphorical, and yet smiles quietly at the challenge. The training bay was silent before she even stepped inside. Ava Cross moved like a shadow cast by inevitability, each step measured, deliberate, and filled with quiet menace. The air itself seemed to tense as she approached the mats, the fluorescent lights reflecting off the polished floor. She glanced at the three Marines, Burke, Lechner, and Harwood, smirking nervously, unaware that every move, every twitch had already been accounted for. "Line up," she said, her voice calm, controlled, almost casual, yet it carried a weight no one could ignore. They obeyed, hesitant, uncertain. This wasn't a threat, not yet, but it was far more dangerous. It was authority cloaked in silence, precise and inevitable. The first man, Burke, stepped onto the mat with a swagger he hadn't felt in days. Ava stood opposite him, gloved hands relaxed, posture neutral, eyes steady, scanning every micro-motion, every misalignment and balance. And then she moved. Not fast, not slow, just exactly as physics demanded. One pivot, one subtle grab, his momentum redirected, and he hit the mat with a controlled thud. Shock painted his face. Pain? Minimal. Embarrassment? Absolute. The entire bay seemed to exhale at once, even the observers frozen in disbelief. It wasn't a fight. It was a statement, an unspoken lesson in consequences that required no yelling, no dramatics, only skill and inevitability. Lechner approached next, attempting to mask his fear with bravado. He lunged, fists raised, thinking strength could counter precision. Ava's stance shifted imperceptibly, hips, shoulders, and weight aligned in perfect geometry. With a swift but silent rotation, she guided his arm, trapped his balance, and the ground rose up to meet him before he knew what had happened. The air snapped with the sound of cloth and mat meeting flesh, soft yet shocking. He landed flat, stunned, humiliation etched across his face. Ava didn't smile, she didn't gloat. Her presence alone conveyed the finality of her dominance. Every observer felt it, a lesson in restraint, control, and strategic patience. Harwood was last. His confidence, fragile, teetered on the edge. He charged, reckless, desperate to reclaim some sense of superiority. Ava shifted weight, pivoted, caught his wrist, dropped her hips, and let gravity complete the motion. Harwood hit the mat in a controlled collapse, breath knocked out of him, pride shredded. Ava's gloves were already folded in her hands, sleeves rolled, as if nothing had happened. She didn't shout, she didn't gloat, she simply nodded toward the observation deck where a SEAL instructor took notes. Every motion had been precise, lawful, ethical, a demonstration of power, not cruelty. And yet the humiliation, the realization of underestimation, landed harder than any strike could have. The command review unfolded like a silent reckoning. Medical logs confirmed the initial incident, timestamps etched in official records, highlighting Ava's restraint and methodical documentation. Her authority as a combat instructor, Navy SEAL, and black belt martial artist had been verified down the chain of command. Every legal, procedural, and operational box had been checked. The aggressor's fates were sealed not by anger, not by retaliation, but by the undeniable truth embedded in bureaucracy, observation, and performance. Demotions, removals, and internal conduct reviews were processed swiftly, without drama, but with consequences permanent and undeniable. The system itself had executed justice through preparation and precision. The psychological impact on the aggressors lingered longer than the physical. Burke's eyes avoided her in the hallway. Lechner didn't laugh at the mess hall. Harwood avoided eye contact entirely. It wasn't fear, it was understanding, the quiet, unspoken knowledge that someone could dismantle arrogance and pride without a single raised voice. Even those who had been silent observers carried the lesson forward. Ava's dominance required no theatrics, no boasting. Her calm control, her meticulous preparation, her unflinching silence left an imprint far deeper than any shouting or punishment ever could. The bay, the mats, the fluorescent-lit corridors, they all became a testament to what it meant to be truly lethal, silently. Even after the immediate confrontation, her presence continued to command respect. She walked past the bays, checking equipment, stacking dummies, adjusting training tools with mechanical precision. Trainees, contractors, and even senior personnel observed her movements and instinctively gave her space. No one interrupted. No one tested her. Not because they were intimidated in the moment, but because they recognized competence, authority, and mastery in its purest, quietest form. Ava Cross had redefined the environment. Silence had become her loudest weapon, precision her most persuasive argument. The impact of her actions would echo through the compound long after the day ended. By late afternoon, the lesson had fully settled in. Minor recruits watched, awestruck and attentive. Veterans recalibrated their understanding of discipline, control, and power. Even the air seemed to hum with the knowledge that restraint could be the deadliest force of all. Ava stood by the exit of the conditioning bay, gloves on, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable, jaw healed but still tense from the first strike that had sparked this chain of events. No one approached her. No one needed to. Respect, fear, understanding, these were all the communication necessary. And somewhere in the corner, Burke, stripped of rank and pride, caught a glimpse of her silent calm. He knew, finally, that this quiet, methodical woman had already won. Not with aggression, not with volume, but with preparation, patience, and unmatched skill. As Ava Cross stepped out of the conditioning bay, the fluorescent lights catching the edge of her gloves, the mats behind her told the story without a single word spoken. Silence had never sounded so loud. The aggressors, stripped of pride and rank, lingered only long enough to register the lesson. Restraint wasn't weakness, precision wasn't arrogance, and patience was the ultimate weapon. Every observer, every trainee, every quiet witness understood that power didn't need noise, it needed readiness, control, and an unshakable calm. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Silent Heroes. Here, we show you stories of quiet dominance, of people who let actions speak louder than words, and of lessons you'll never forget. Ava Cross isn't the kind of hero who seeks attention. She's the kind you notice long after she's gone, the kind who redefines strength in ways you didn't even know existed. And today's story proves that patience, preparation, and restraint can outmatch ego, arrogance, and brute force every single time. If this story made you stop and think, if it left your heart racing or your mind replaying every calculated move, then please help our channel continue this mission. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss the next silent hero whose story will change the way you see strength. And comment below. Let me know where in the world you're watching from. I read every single one, and your thoughts fuel this journey of real-life, quiet domination. Share this story with someone who still believes that silence means weakness. Let them see the truth. Silence can be the loudest warning, the deadliest weapon, and the ultimate justice. Ava Cross showed us all that, and her story isn't just remembered, it's lived through every pause, every observation, every calculated choice she made. So, if Ava's journey left even the tiniest mark on your understanding of power, respect, or patience, then do me a favor, subscribe, like, and comment. Let us know that her story reached you, that it changed the way you think about silent heroes in our world. Because this isn't just a story, it's a lesson, a warning, and above all, it's proof that true power doesn't shout, it waits, watches, and strikes when the moment is perfect.